So let's go ahead and start again. Yes, I know it sucked. Thank you. I'm doing it. Hi everyone, I'm April and you're watching The Tangled Cat Speaks, and this is a book edition. Okay, so like I said, I'm April. I am here in Rio Rancho, New Mexico, and I like to knit and crochet and read and talk about those things when I can. This time is going to be just books. I think tomorrow or the day after I will be talking about yarny stuff. So this time is just books. So the last time we talked, I was telling you about this series by Laura Childs, a tea shop mystery series, and there's like 20 something in the series. And since then, I have read 2 more. Shades of Earl Grey was number 2, and then, or no, is that a lie? That might be a lie. Hold on. Am I lying? I was lying, because Gunpowder Green was number 2. And then Shades of Earl Grey was number 3. Now these are the cozy mysteries, amateur sleuth type books by Laura Childs, set mostly in a tea shop in Charleston, South Carolina. The lady who owns the tea shop, her name is Theodosia. In my head when I'm reading it, I hear Theodosia. I don't know why. Anyway, I have tried reading it out loud to myself in a Southern Belle accent. I don't do that accent very well, so I won't do it here, but that's how, in my head, that's how her name is. That's how they say her name. Anyway, so amateur sleuth, she runs a tea shop. She's got an older gentleman who does her tea blends, like he's like a master tea blender or whatever, and so he procures all of these different teas, and then he blends them up for different occasions. And in each of these books, she always ends up in some sort of situation where she comes across a corpse, which is the way of cozy mystery. So I'm not going to get into too much. I'm not going to get into any more about this series other than that. I've done 2 of them, and I'm really, really enjoying them. Very short, very it's just exactly what this genre is. Cozy mysteries. Your brain just kind of shuts off. You don't have to really think too hard. You just kind of go with the thing. I know there are a lot of people who like to read these and try to figure out who done it, and not me. I just want to go for the ride and be like surprised at the end. Sometimes I can guess it, but I don't try to guess it, if that makes any sense. So I enjoyed these 2, and I am going to continue this series with these are the next 2 I'm hoping to get done this month, but at least 1, but my hope is to get 2 done in April. The 4th one is the Jasmine Moon Murders, and then the 5th one would be Chamomile Morning. Very fun, very relaxing reads. And then I was also talking last time about this book by Arnold Federbush, The Man Who Lived in Inner Space. I was just a few chapters in the last time. I did finish it. Super short. It's 130 something pages, 148 pages. Super short. And even on the back it describes part Jules Verne, part Jacques Cousteau, part Rachel Carson. So it's an underwater type of adventure. Starts off with the guy working in an industrial plant near a river or a large body of water. I think it's a big river. Or is it by the... I think it's a river that is really close to the ocean. Anyways, so where we left off last time I spoke with you all, there's just a lot of grime and in the city where he's at, and he's just sick of it all. He sticks to himself. he ended up in an industrial accident at this plant as a young guy. He stays there, and then it kind of jumps forward, and he's an older man, and he's very badly scarred and everything. So, and everything has become so automated in this plant that he is literally the only person there most of the time, monitoring gauges and making sure that things aren't going to go boom again. So he's very antisocial. He wants to stay away from everyone, and he's fine being the only one in this plant. He doesn't want to deal with people. But then he starts to realize, there's just some ugliness going on in nature because of all of the dumping, the chemical dumping that this plant that he's at, other plants in the area are wreaking havoc with nature. And for whatever reason, and I never really understood this part, kind of just glossed over why, but the zoo was closed down and there were still animals in the zoo. There wasn't anybody there. He finds this seal. Yes, I know, it was tragic, right? And he befriends this seal. She's young, and he builds a tank for her in this plant that he's at. Like I said, he's the only one there, so nobody notices what he's doing. He builds this tank for her, and he teaches her how to swim. As she was really, really young, she was, I'm assuming that her mother had not survived whatever reason why the zoo was abandoned. But he raised her for a little while and really became her friend, and she was his only friend for quite a while. And she grew up, and then he started taking her to the water, to the beach, and letting her swim out in the wild. And she would come back, and then one day she just didn't. She didn't come back, and so he's all very sad and melancholy, and he starts to really, really, really miss her. And this whole part of the story is kind of based on the premise of sirens and mermaids, and how old time sailors used to think that mermaids and sirens were real, calling them to the water. And he was starting to think, okay, well, maybe this seal was actually a person in disguise, was a mermaid in disguise coming up on land to lure him, because he was really feeling the call to be where she's at. And so he starts building this contraption, and he ends up making sort of like some sort of submersible submarine type thing. Not quite as extravagant as, what was it called in 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea? Is it 20,000 leagues or is it 10,000? Because I am never sure. I think it's 20,000. Anyway, Captain Nemo. What was the name of his little submersible? Not little. His very elaborate submersible thingy. Did it have a name? Anyways, he ends up making something like that, but on a smaller scale, not quite as extravagant. And he leaves. He doesn't tell anybody. He just gets in this thing, and he's it's science fiction, and it's very short science fiction. And again, this was written in 1972, but it was there's really no hard science behind any of it. It's just like, oh well, he put a few things together and was able to make this submersible home, and he's got machinery that can continuously make oxygen for him. All of these things that you just kind of have to just take at face value. It's not ever really explained by any kind of science. So anyway, so he's living there, and he's exploring the bottom of the ocean, and finding out, he really loves it down here. It's peaceful, and everything has its own hierarchy under the water. All of this and you learn a little bit about certain animals and stuff. And at first he starts to feel peaceful, and he's hoping that he comes across his friend the seal. And sure enough, she finds him, and she comes and stays with him on his submersible sometimes, because he's got a little hatch underneath that she can come up. And sometimes he goes down and he puts on this diving gear, and he swims along with her and everything. And then he starts to get scared, because he starts to realize there's a shark in that territory, and that shark wants to know all about the thing that keeps coming out of this big metal tube. So he's plagued by this shark. And so anyways, it goes on and on. He's underwater, and at some point he decides to drift further and further away, and he wants to explore deeper, and he goes beyond some sort of thermal, I know that exists and I don't know the name of it, but there's like a thermal thing, and so below that it gets even colder, and there's a whole other ecosystem down there. And so he's exploring that, but the seal can't follow him through there. It's too much for her. It's just too much pressure, the water pressure, and it's too much of a temperature difference and this. But he is away from the shark. But he starts to feel lonely again, and so all of these things happen, and so basically it's just taking you on this kind of this trip, and it's more of a self exploration as well as exploring the sea, and it was really, really interesting. It does go really, really fast. Like I say, it's super short, and there's not a whole lot of explanation on things. You just kind of, they say it and you just have to accept it. I don't mind writing like that. I also really do love things that explain every little detail. So, I was really surprised that I enjoyed this as much as I did. So I'm glad that I found this in a little free library and said, hey, I'm going to try it, because I very much enjoyed it. Was it as amazing as 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea? No. But I enjoyed it regardless. So yay, there was that. Friends, I finished The Name of the Rose. I finished it. And I did, and like I mentioned way back whenever I first started talking about it, the key to The Name of the Rose, which lists the real life historical people that are named in this historical fiction. It describes the places that are talked about in the book, and it also translates some Latin, all of the Latin phrases that are used by the monks in this book. They're never translated here in this, and I don't think that you need to know what they are to enjoy the book. You could just kind of gloss over them. They're not big key points to the plot. They're just kind of there because they're monks in medieval times, and they're going to say Latin-y things. But this book came in handy because I am the kind of person I want to know, and so I was able to use these two books in conjunction, and I had a really, 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 really good time. They found out who done it. There was actually a couple of deaths, mysterious deaths that happened, and it was very intriguing. Very, very, very. This is a very opposite of this, where this one told you so many details about everything. I mean, they even described one archway entering into one of the libraries where it's just carved with all of this just imagery. It's just so much like what they like a descent into hell and angels, and like very, very heavily described all of it, and I was just fascinated. It just sounded beautiful. I very, very much enjoyed this book, and I am glad that I stuck with it, even though it was taking me a long time to read, mostly because of, time, and there was that little time back in a few months ago where I wasn't reading at all. So it did take me a long time, but that's not because of the book's fault. It was me. I enjoyed the heck out of it, and now that I did finish it, I am going to watch the movie that was made based on it. I'm very excited about that too, because that has Sean Connery and Christian Slater in it. So I don't know if it's a good I don't know if it's a good adaptation or not, but I hope so, because I really, really, really enjoyed that story. And I do have, I think, 2 or 3 other physical books by Umberto Eco that now that I know I enjoyed that one, I hope that I enjoy the others at some point in the future. Okay. And the other thing that I read that I finished was this book by Dan Simmons, Darwin's Blade. Now this is one of the ones after I finished these ones, I went and did the random number generator and was trying to pick something out of the boxes that I've already got packed for my move and trying to fill up the different years in my little personal challenge to get a lot of these physical books read, and I'm either going to keep them or I'm going to give them to a little free library. And so, like I said, I've got 1972, which is the one I just did, The Man Who Lived in Inner Space. I don't know why they called it Inner Space. Maybe because, he was underwater. But like I said, there was a lot of self-reflection in that too. Maybe that's why it was called that. But they could have just said The Man Who Lived Underwater or The Man Who Lived Under the Ocean, or I don't know. But they said inner space, and I was thinking it was going to be space. But then I looked at the cover, and the cover has a dude underwater. So interesting. Anyway, I got lost there. So anyways, I did the random number generator, and in the box I found this guy. And this is from 2000. So here's this little area is filled up pretty well. These are mostly the Cozy Mysteries that I just finished by Laura Childs, and then Darwin's Blade is over here. So yeah, I'll have all of these to fill up. I've got, I think, up to, what does that start at? 1971, and then I've got the 60s, 50s, 40s, blah blah blah, until we get to 1900. Then before that it's the 1800s, and then the top up here is before anything that I have that was written before 1800. And then I've got all the way up to 2025. I do have another page here that is for other books that I've read, like, say, a couple of these books are, I decided to pick up a while back, and I've already read those years, but I still read them, so I want to list that I read them. So those are there, and then these are the audiobooks. So the audiobooks, lost my train of thought. This was 2000. Darwin's Blade, that was written in 2000, and this is more of a thriller, I guess. I know Dan Simmons as fantasy when I first read Hyperion. Now there are 3 other books in the Hyperion series that I want to get to at some point, but I haven't got to them yet, but I'm excited because I loved Hyperion. And then I also know him as a horror writer when I did the Seasons of Horror or something like that. There was 4 books. So those were really good. This was not that. This was definitely a thriller. Darwin refers to a man who is a PhD. He's got a PhD in physics. So he's a doctor, and his first name is Darwin. He doesn't work as like a professor or anything like that with his PhD. He is an accident reconstructionist. So insurance companies call him, he works freelance, but insurance companies call him to, when there's car accidents or, any kind of accident where an insurance claim might be filed, and he has to go and try to figure out what happened and are these people entitled to their claim. That kind of thing. And along the way, it turns out that he had found something out that is worth him getting killed over. And so he's trying to figure out, first of all, okay, well, which case was it? What did I do? What did I work on? And so he's got to figure out who these people are that are after him. And it's a very fast read. It's very exciting. It does talk in great detail of these accidents that he finds himself having to investigate and do reconstruction on. But some of these accidents are very, very gruesome. Like there's one on a construction site where a dude gets smushed. Very, very detailed on the smushiness of the victim. All kinds of stuff. It's very, very heavy on that. So if you don't like reading very gory kind of stuff, don't read that. But I didn't mind it. It was good. It was a good story. It went by really quickly, and I am glad that I enjoyed it. I wasn't sure it being a different genre than the other two genres that I knew this author for. So yeah, I finished Darwin's Blade. And now we will talk about audiobooks. The last time we spoke, I was telling you, was I telling you? Yes, I was telling you about a series that I was listening to, because mostly if I was into it, wanting to read it, because the narrator is Colin Morgan and I love his voice. And yes, I enjoyed that book very, very much. The first book, which was called Worldship Humility, which is also the name of the series. I finished the second and third books in that series. It's a trilogy, so there's no more. So I read L4 Drop, or not read, listened to, and then I listened to L4 1. And like I had mentioned in the last episode, the first book it's in space. It's a whole fleet of very large ships. Each ship is basically representative of a country back on Earth. And so all of this fleet of ships are kind of tied together navigationally by one main ship. So they're all kind of flying in one formation, flying together. But life runs normal on the ship. It's like, there's bars, and there's a seedy part of the ship where, there's the poorer people, and also the gangs and the crime and seedy hotels and strip clubs and blah blah blah. So there's one young woman, and she's a petty thief. She shoplifts, and then she turns around and tries to resell stuff. She decides she wants to get something bigger out of life. She wants to make a big heist, and she's figured out that she looks very similar to someone who works in the finance department. Finance department handles the credits that is their currency, their money. And she's like, well, if I can get into her office and pretend to be her, I can steal this money. I can steal a little bit of this cryptocurrency or whatever. And she ends up befriending this nerdy kind of guy who is a hacker. He's able to hack into computers, and so she kind of coaxes him into helping her with her big heist. And he goes along because he just thinks she's super cute, and he is basically smitten with her. And so that's basically the first whole book. But it turns out when she stole the cryptocurrency, she decided she was going to get greedy and not pull just one file with this currency. She pulled a second file. That file was not actually the cryptocurrency she thought it was, and she doesn't know what it is, but people are trying to kill her over it. And so her and this guy are trying to get figure out what is going on. And that's kind of how it ends in the first book. The second book is people figuring out that there is something big going on with this code that she has, this file, and now there are more and more people just getting involved, and there's hired assassins, and there's just all of this kind of stuff. Just people from all these different country ships are just like, what is going on? There's a whole lot of political stuff going on, but it's just a fast-paced, wild ride of turf war, basically. And the code kind of takes a second. The crypto, or the secret code that she accidentally stole, kind of takes a backseat to some political things going on. There's somebody trying to become the captain of that ship and be elected, and there's just all of this. You know how elections go. There's always somebody saying, oh no, they're really bad, oh no, they're really bad, vote for me, that kind of thing. There's a whole lot of stuff going on, but there's also a lot of intrigue, and they're finding out that there is something going on, and they're trying to get this new person who's trying to be elected to figure out why it's happening. There are shipments from one of the main ships that is supposed to be bringing supplies, medical, food, all kinds of stuff, and they keep getting either misdelivered or they're getting expired product, stuff like that. And so they have to figure out why they're getting all of this messed up. And so it becomes this big old mission. And the young woman from the first one who stole the cryptocurrency, because she's a good thief, they decide to use her to help them figure out what is going on. She's able to sneak into places and stuff. So, I'm not going to say what happens, but they do figure out why. And then the third book is basically, it comes back again to the secret code and what it means. And now that the main head honchos, there are 6 people who run this entire fleet. They call themselves the 6, and they basically consider themselves gods. And they're basically the super, 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 super rich. And they control everything, including the media, the money, everything. The law enforcement, they control everything. People running through the streets of these ships, battling each other, and uprises and protests and all kinds of stuff like that. And trying to figure out who these 6 actually are. Nobody has ever seen them. They know of each other, and there are a few people who have access to them, who know who they are, but in general, their identities are not known. So basically, this third book is trying to figure out who they are, and they're trying to overthrow them. It was very, very interesting, and it all sounds very heavy, but really the author was really, really, really good at throwing in levity and comedy, and it was just a wild ride. All 3 books, wild and fun and heavy and thought-provoking, all of that stuff. It was really surprising to me how much all of these things are just in there without it feeling clunky. I thought it was really, really well done. And then Colin Morgan and his wonderful voice acting skills, he just made these characters come to life. I think he was probably the best part of the whole thing, honestly. The story was wonderful, the whole plot and everything. I was into it. I liked it. But he did so well with the voices. And it's very rare that I like when a man does female voices, but he did so good. There is one particular character, she's kind of a side character. I love her though. She was my favorite. I love her. She is just sarcastic, so sarcastic, and I love her so much. But he did really well with the voices, especially because there was a lot of different, like I say, each ship represents a different country. So he was able to kind of portray all of these different voices and accents and stuff. And I think the only thing that I would say that might be a big, big turnoff for people, and I was kind of thinking of DNFing it at the very, very beginning of the first book, because this book relies very, 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 very heavily on sexual content, good and bad. So just a warning, if you ever want to get into R.R. Haywood's World Ship Humility trilogy, very, very, very heavy on the sexual stuff. Some of it is funny, some of it is very explicit, some of it is bad and very, very bad. And by bad, I mean, non-consensual. But like I said, this author does really, really well with making things feel heavy and then bringing you right back with the levity and the comedy, and just making things a little lighter, but the story just progresses super fast. And I really enjoyed all the characters. I just thought that everything was done really well, and I enjoyed that series. And I do have a few other books, by this author. And I can't remember if they're standalones or if they're part of another series, but I liked this author very much in this series, so maybe I'll read more by R.R. Haywood. And so that's what I have finished. I've already told you what I'm going to read as far as the cozy mysteries. I've already started another book. I'm really only one chapter in, and I just started it last night. This is another one that I found at the Little Free Library. Dan Darling's Archaeopteryx. I just lost my bookmark. It's a good thing that I know I'm only in the first chapter. Now, if you can read very closely, this is Albuquerque Trilogy Book 1. So I picked this out of the Little Free Library because it mentions Albuquerque. Turns out it is completely set in Albuquerque, New Mexico, which is where I'm from. This particular author, I think, grew up in Albuquerque. I think he lives somewhere else now, Minnesota, maybe? Well, I don't remember. Let's see. About the author, Dan Darling. He now lives in Minnesota. I was right. But he did grow up in Albuquerque, and he's also done some research about fauna and flora in Albuquerque, because this book, I don't know much of anything yet. Like I said, I'm only one chapter in, but the main character is a zookeeper, and he is called out to go look at something very interesting along the bosque. The bosque is just basically like how would you describe a bosque to someone who doesn't know what a bosque is? It's along the river. It's like the semi-foresty, semi-desert, it's just like a whole different ecosystem along the rivers, along the river, the Rio Grande River. And there's a lot of animals, and there's the whole ecosystem there. And this starts off with thousands upon thousands upon thousands of birds all drop dead at the exact same moment in the bosque. And so he's called out to go pick up a few of these dead birds and take them so that they can get analyzed and try to figure out why did they all just suddenly literally just drop out of the sky, including some species of birds that were on the endangered species list and stuff like that. So that it starts off very intriguing, like, okay, what is going on? How did that happen? So is it something natural? Is it some sort of disease, or is it something man-made? Is it something? My mind right away goes, is it something supernatural? Archaeopteryx. I don't know what Archaeopteryx is. I could have looked it up, I guess. But in my mind, I'm thinking dinosaur. So that's what I thought it might be about. But it might just be a lizard. I don't know. I'm not sure. But we'll find out. But that's what I'm reading about now. So it's very, very fun for me to be reading about something in an area that I'm familiar with. So yeah, that's Archaeopteryx. Now, this was written in 2017. So I filled up my 2017 slot in my little list. However, this says it's a trilogy, but the other two books do not exist as of yet. So I don't know if I'm going to like this so much and then be sad that the other two don't exist, or I'm going to be relieved. I don't know. But already I am intrigued with this storyline or this premise. And then another book that I would like to get to is another thriller. I believe it's a thriller. Yes, part detective story. I'm covering my face. Am I covering my face? Part detective story, part ghost story, and part Southern Gothic. Stuart Wood's Under the Lake. So that sounds an interesting mingle of genres. Ghost story, detective story. I'm in for it. I have not, to my recollection, read anything by Stuart Woods. Another little free library pick. And where does this fall into my book list thing? 2011. So this is going to fill up my 2011 spot. And that is all. No, another lie. My next audiobook is going to be Babel by R.F. Kuang. I only know that it deals something to do with languages. My son read it. He said he thinks that I would enjoy it. So I have it on Audible and I am going to listen to that. Anyway, I'm just rambling on now because I've had a long week, a long day, and I'm getting hungry. So that is all that I've got as far as books. I'm hoping that tomorrow I can get back on and talk about some yarny stuff. I appreciate you spending a little bit of time with me, and I will see you again next time.